evening, Superintendent Downey, President Cheatham, to all of our school board members, and everybody here tonight. You know, every day our teachers and school administrators are constantly thinking outside the box, looking for ways to be creative and to be able to excite, engage, and motivate our students to not just learn, but to want to learn, to be inquisitive, and to discover. Well, today was an amazing day, an amazing display of that at several of our schools as they embraced the national movement Rock Your School Day. And I'd like to direct your attention to the screen overhead because classrooms were transformed beyond your wildest imagination. Children were greeted by music, by a drum line. There was a concert this afternoon at Elm Grove Middle School. They delved into hands-on activities all day that tied into guidebook lessons, Eureka math, art, science, and so much more. And it was so much fun, and in fact, it even caught the eye of a film crew from Get Your Teach On, which is a high-energy professional development conference that many of our Bossier Parish teachers attended over the summer. And Elm Grove Middle and W.T. Lewis, in fact, were selected among more than 30,000 schools across the nation that applied to be part of the documentary being filmed throughout the nation in classrooms today as they rocked their school. So the goal ultimately is for students to leave thinking that was the best day of school ever, and then be excited about returning to school the next day to see what awaits them. And, you know, a big shout out to our amazing educators that made this day happen as they rocked their school. So many of them were burning the midnight oil last night. I think some of them left their schools around 11 o'clock or later last night. So they don't have a lot of gas in their tank at this point. They're going to be pretty much falling into bed tonight. They're exhausted, but they have had a fantastic day, and so did our students. So it's pretty apparent that our schools really rocked it today. So a lot of fun. In fact, they're having a parent night, I believe, at W.T. Lewis tonight, and letting parents be able to see what it's all about. Speaking of rocking at school, more than 70 of our Bossier Parish students rocked the LEAP assessment exam last year, the 2019 LEAP assessment in the spring. From elementary to high school, we had dozens of learners who earned perfect scores in at least one content area. So tonight, we are recognizing them in a special way, and I know that it does all of your hearts good to be able to see this auditorium packed, because this is symbolic of all the students who scored perfect on the LEAP in at least one of those areas, and then of course their cheerleaders, their families, and their friends here. So if you will, first of all, help me welcome Debbie Gegg. She is our Supervisor of Accountability and Assessment as she recognizes these incredible students. Ms. Gegg?
Thank you, Mrs. Bales. All right, I have a few statistics. 76 perfect LEAP scores were earned this past spring by 73 students across 14 Bossier Parish schools. These students definitely embody the district vision of winning the day. Approximately 15,000 students in our district take the state assessment each year, and our 73 honorees are being recognized for their commitment to their studies and having this perfect score on at least one of the content areas of the LEAP test, like Mrs. Bales just mentioned. So when your name is called, please come to the front and remain up here in this section for a group photo, and we will do this by elementary, and then elementary kiddos, you'll move down this way and wait up front for another special surprise. And then middle school will be called, and we'll do the same. We'll move you across this way a little bit, and then high school will be called next. And we know there are a lot of activities this evening: football, volleyball, cross country, but we are calling everybody's name because we are so very proud. So on behalf of the school board members, President Cheatham and Mr. Downey, we congratulate you for sure for your hard work. Here we go. Elementary. From Legacy Elementary. Okay, these kiddos that I'm calling out, they had a perfect score on the English Language Arts portion of the LEAP test last spring. And from Legacy, Olivia Grantham. Come on down. From W.T. Lewis, a few children there. Braylon Busby, Tatiana Fries, Charlotte Gaddy. From Elm Grove Elementary, Benjamin Vo. From Kingston Elementary, Melena Kirsch, Cole McLaurin, Bailey Doyle, and Lillian Myers. From Houghton Elementary, Kinsley Boudreau, and Liam Luter. Come on down. All right, a perfect score on the math portion of that LEAP assessment last year at Platt Elementary was Emily Valdez. From Legacy Elementary, Ian Mejia. And Kingston Elementary, Colt Herndon. And Zoe Beckham. And on the social studies portion of the test, congratulations to these 3 Princeton Elementary students, Richard Beach, Elise Abear, and Callie Rab. And on the science portion of the LEAP, at the time at W.T. Lewis, Giovanni Maxey. And from Kingston Elementary, William Baldwin. Okay. Sorry, logistics. Y'all stay right there. You're so cute. This is the best honors assembly. Okay, here we go. From middle school, perfect LEAP scores on the English language arts portion of the LEAP test at the time at Cope Middle, Elizabeth Mitchell. Elm Grove Middle, Heather Edmonds. From Green Acres Middle School, Nawal Hajali. Houghton Middle, Kylie Small. And Kylie, while you're coming down and everyone sees who you are for sure, she also had a perfect score on the math section. Back to ELA from Benton Middle School, Caitlin Johnson and Ashlyn Moore. Okay, and we already called out Kylie for math. And for the social studies perfect scores at the middle school level this past year, Green Acres Middle, McKinley Brooks. From Houghton Middle, Leslie Smith. And Leslie also had a perfect score on the Algebra 1 portion of that test. And from Benton Middle, perfect score on social studies, Camden Langley. Kale Latimer. All right, Algebra 1. From Cope Middle School at the time, Kylie Altament. And Peyton DeBlue. And Emmeline Nagit. And from Houghton Middle, Leslie Smith. I already said Leslie. Congratulations. And also from Benton Middle for perfect score in Algebra 1, Jackson Clark. Bryce Hughes. Chloe Kelly. And Kale, wave your hand. He's already standing up here. Congratulations. And Ashlyn Moore. Ashlyn had 2 perfect scores, one on ELA and Algebra 1, if I neglected to say that. And our other Algebra 1 perfect score, Caroline Moore. All right, high school. From Benton High on the English 1 test, these 3 students earned a perfect score. Caitlin Arnold, Carmen Edwards, and Caitlin Suey. All right, English 2. This district, we have several students that scored perfectly on the English 2 test, and from Airline High School they are Madeline Frentress, Alexis Johnson, Morgan Kunith, Brianna Maxwell, Donovan McGee, Kirsten Pearson, Jackson White, Sarah Gaddy, and Nia Perry. All right, from Benton High, perfect score. Also on English 2, Evan Bonar. And he is here, and I want to point out that Evan also had a perfect score on the biology test. Congratulations, Evan. All right, Douglas Graham, Sierra Haynes, Jacob Marcinkus, Emily Murphy, Emma Murphy, Allie Murphy, Brady Sessions, and Chloe Welch, also from Benton High. From Houghton High School on English 2, perfect scores for Corbin Butler, Andrew Densmore, Montana Powell, Delaria Schatzman. Y'all can stand in front of me too. All right, from Parkway High School, perfect score in English 2, Olivia Bamberg, Lydia Dang, Tanera McCain, and Jillian Pease. All right, moving on to English 3. From Benton High School, perfect score from Aiden McGee. And from Airline High School, Lauren Engelkey. And finally, U.S. History, our perfect score goes to Dario Kosick from Parkway High School. All right, at this time, Mrs. Bales has a special presentation.
Thank you so much. As Mrs. Gegg mentioned, these students truly do embody our district's motto, win the day, every student, every way. And, you know, when they do something this big, their accomplishment calls for special recognition. So I would like to ask our superintendent, Mitch Downey, to please come forward. Tonight, you are the very first recipients of a very special award that our superintendent, Mr. Downey, is going to be giving out this year. And when he goes around the district and he sees something exceptional happening or someone accomplishing great things, he's going to be giving out superintendent shout-outs. And tonight, you all are getting his first superintendent shout-outs. So this is exciting. I'd like to recognize someone first of all. Mike Billings, if you would please stand for me. Mike Billings is from Dixie Mays Farms, and also we have partners in the audience from Cumulus Radio, Tiffany Curtis, and Scooter Man from 99.7 FM. I think he's somewhere in the audience if you want to stand up. And when Superintendent Downey goes around the district, he is going to have various ways to kind of give tangible pats on the back, if you will. But thanks to Mr. Billings from Dixie Mays Farms, all of these students tonight are receiving passes to Dixie Mays Farms for their fall festival, which kicks off this Saturday. It's a lot of fun, so all of you can go enjoy the cool corn mazes that they have, the hayride, the games, and all of that, all those other fun activities that they have there. So, Mr. Downey, I'm going to have you come forward. I think we're just going to take probably one group picture first because we actually have the students' names in alphabetical order on the passes, so that might be a little difficult right now. We'll take them out in the lobby and have a group photo, but I wanted to be able to, first of all, have you take a photo with maybe middle and high school students. If you could come up behind our elementary school students on the stage, and we could take a quick pic. And then after we finish with this particular photo, we'll ask that all of our students meet Ms. Richardson out in the lobby, and they're going to take some more group photos, and we'll hand out the passes, the superintendent shout-outs to them there. So let's give all of our students a big round of applause. What a huge accomplishment, and I'm going to let all of you just file out. I'm going to ask all of our parents and everyone to stay tight. If you don't mind, we're just going to ask our students to go out into the lobby for a quick group photo, and then we'll release you in just a couple of minutes after that. So if you don't mind, just all of you lead that way, and just going straight out the door. Miss Richardson is going to take some group photos. Also with our sponsors, again, a big shout out to Mike Billings with Dixie Mays Farms and to Cumulus Radio. Thank you. Well, as our students make their way out to the lobby, we want to recognize someone else very near and dear to us. So if I can have that photo pulled up. Does anybody recognize this guy in the jersey? Well, this is none other than our own District 7 school board member, Mr. J.W. Slack here. Mr. Slack was quite the ball player back in his day during his high school years at Bossier High School and then his college years in the 1950s. And we are excited to announce that next month, on October 18th, Mr. Slack is being inducted into Louisiana Tech's 2019 Athletics Hall of Fame. So a few stats. So Mr. Slack was a 3-year starter, all conference as a senior, a solid running back, safety, punter, place kicker, kick returner, and team leader on one of Louisiana Tech's best ever teams. So he was quite the standout. And not only him, but the Slacks are the first 3-generation football family in Tech's history. 2 of Mr. Slack's sons played for Tech, and then his grandson Hayden was a walk-on wide receiver. So quite the legacy. And we are so happy for Mr. Slack being recognized 60 years later, and we just want to express to him how proud we are of him. Again, 2019 inductee into the Louisiana Tech Athletic Hall of Fame, J.W. Slack. I'm full of surprises, Mr. Slack.
But they like to waited too long. But anyway, it's a great honor for me to get to this age in my life and to have an honor bestowed upon me like they're going to do on the 18th, on the 17th. And I really appreciate it, and it was a complete surprise to me. I didn't know I was that good, really. It sounded pretty good when it came from her.
Well, congratulations again. We're very excited for you and proud of you. And President Cheatham, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Ms. Bales. Are we releasing parents at this time? Okay, parents, you're welcome to hang around for business, but if you'd like to, you can leave as well. Bye. Move on to item 3.01. If we have any Bossier Youth Leadership members in the audience, please stand up, tell us who you are, and tell us where you go to school. Thank you very much for being here tonight. One of us can sign your sheet at the end of the meeting, okay? All right. item 3.01, report academic strategy plan presentation presented by Mr. Mitch Downey, Superintendent.
Thank you, President Cheatham. Just have a short presentation. I want to introduce this to you. All of you've gotten copies of this, and just want to quickly review what we're attempting to do here. And the goal is stated at the top: just retain our highly effective teachers, identify schools that have critical challenges, and then select an academic strategy model to be able to attract and retain the highly effective teachers at those sites, and then have a qualification to make teachers eligible to receive the stipend. So we started out, we selected 5 schools with some great challenges. They're listed there. Bossier High was included in that group, even though Bossier High is a B school at the current time. They have a very difficult time retaining teachers, and so we included them in this pilot group. We wanted to start small so we could manage it and sustain it, and be able to adapt and evaluate at the end of the first year. Excuse me. And so through principal and district level recommendations, we're going to train teachers in the following areas. There's these state offered endorsements, either a mentor, ELA content leader, math content, or intervention content leader. And those costs for training would be paid by the district to the state. You can see what they are. All teachers, no matter what school they're at, if they receive this endorsement on their certificate, they would be awarded a $750 stipend, which hopefully will result in improved instruction in all of our schools, not just those 5 identified for the pilot. Yes, sir. Mr. Cheatham, Mr. Newman, I get y'all confused. That is a one-time $750 stipend. And so it would not be reoccurring. Teachers at schools with a certification, or that at those schools that have been identified, and they received that certification by the end of January on their certificate, would be eligible a $3,000 stipend to be awarded at the end of May, pending certain criteria and goals that are set with professional development and a leadership component. From May of 2020 and beyond, as long as they remain at those identified schools, they would continue to receive that stipend at the end of the year. And then step 3 are the qualification, and we've gone over what those areas are. Leadership would mean that they were either the sponsor of a club or organization to be able to qualify for that component, and then they presented professional development or participated in professional development, or they were a part of the leadership team and designated as such. And then they have a compass observation of highly effective. The other initiative is to attract substitute teachers to Russian Middle School. Currently, the daily rate of pay for any substitute at any of our schools is anywhere from $60 to $70, depending on educational level. And then if they become long-term subs after the 15th day, then that money goes up. What we're trying to do is create an additional $30 to $35 increase above what we normally pay in order to try to help attract substitutes to that school. So that's basically the beginning of the process. We've identified other schools that we want to help to provide additional resources. All of these funds would come from Title I set-asides or Title II, as far as the district being responsible for the payment of the training through the state. The academic strategy term comes from the requirement for CIR schools or UIR schools, which basically is comprehensive intervention required or urgent intervention required. This, along with what we've already done with the turnaround facilitators that we were able to place, the 5, hopefully will begin the process where we're going to try to expand and provide tangible resources to those schools that have difficulty because of a number of different reasons. So I'd be glad to entertain any questions. Yes, ma'am.
Is the training going to be open to all teachers in the parish to be trained?
Yes, ma'am. It's actually a pretty extensive process. It's a 9-day training, and then they have to complete several modules in order to graduate, so to speak, from the program and reach the certification. Obviously, we want highly effective teachers based on their VAM scores and COMPAS results. If we have a teacher that has some areas of deficiency, I would think that we would want to correct those deficiencies prior to sponsoring them in this program.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, Mr. Bullard.
Thank you, Mr. Downey. You said there's a 9-day training period. Now, is that on site in Baton Rouge, or do they come here, or is it online? How is that accomplished?
Dr. Bourgeois.
For the last 2 years, training has been in Baton Rouge. The State Department has asked local universities to take over the training. So we have partnered with Louisiana Tech, and we have so many members in the Bossier cohort that we will have a mentor cohort in Bossier, and there's another cohort meeting for content leader in Ruston that we're involved with, as well as Shreveport. So it will be local this coming year.
And when we say 9 days, are those 9 school days? Will we be taking these people out of the classroom for 9 days?
Three of the days occurred this summer, so the remaining days will be through the school year. Yes, they are taken out of the classroom.
And what is our level of participation based on what you saw this summer?
We have tried to ensure that every school has a mentor trained, at least one ELA, one math content leader, and one intervention content leader.
So we're looking at somewhere over 100 people.
Yes, sir. And then in our more needy schools, we have other requirements, as you can see up there, number 5 and number 6, requirements by the State Department that even principals, administrators have to be trained as intervention content leaders in the UIR schools.
Thank you, Dr. Bourgeois.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Superintendent Downey. I commend you for coming up with an idea to address our instructional needs at some specific schools.
Well, that wasn't me by myself. We had a committee that met, Dr. Bourgeois and several of our other, Ms. Gegg, our accountability, and some principals and some people in finance to try to come up with a way that we could fund with current funds, and also that was rigorous enough, and we feel like the content leader program is rigorous enough that we can assure that when we compensate these people, it's going to be based on merit and impact, and so that's the reason that it has been set up the way that it is. Thank you.
I do commend you and the others you mentioned. We've been looking for means whereby we could address some issues that, gosh, we've thrown a lot of resources at it, and it seems like this is a very positive use of our resources.
We're excited about it. We want to be cautious. That's the word that's been used over and over. We want to make sure this is something that we can continue to support. We feel like the funds being earmarked as Title I funds that are set aside funds are going to be a continuous resource for us to even expand the program to really take an actionable approach and not just lip service. The people that are involved in the initiatives that have already been put in place are still very excited about their opportunity to impact those schools. And I think all of us want to be around the day that we're able to do this for all schools that have those struggles. So thank you very much.
At least, so there's no misunderstanding, and you and I conversed on this earlier today, just so there's no misunderstanding, you found a means whereby we could utilize non-local funding.
Yes, sir.
And, at least for now, you can cover, most, if not all, of the costs associated with this proposal through, outside funding.
Yes, sir. And we feel very confident that funding will continue. There's no indication that fund will diminish in any way. Obviously, we can't predict what the federal government's going to do, but those funds have been in place for decades, and so it's a pretty great assurance that we will be able to continue this on into the next few decades.
Thank you, sir.
Will they work with the volunteers that's put in place in Russia now, or is that a separate?
The two turnaround interventionists, yes, sir, ma'am, they would all work as a team to find solutions to the challenges that we have at all of those schools. And the model that is being created at Bossier Elementary and Russian High will be duplicated as the program expands.
Thank you.
Did I say Bossier High? I meant Bossier Elementary, I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Downey, will it be limited to a certain number of teachers that can go for the training? I mean, how will those be selected?
Well, we've talked about using BAM scores and compass observations and principal input. And like I said earlier, obviously if we have a teacher that has certain deficiencies, we want to shore up those deficiencies before we would allow them an opportunity for this training. But that's a valid question, and my answer would be, you know, if we have 300 or 400 teachers in our district that are trained as content leader specialists, that doesn't do anything but make our district stronger. The training is so beneficial and rigorous that when they're through with it, they are a much more knowledgeable teacher about what the standards are and how to properly instruct students, and so that they can acquire the standards or meet the standards. And so I don't think because of the rigor that we're going to have more than we can benefit from. But I guess the simple answer to your question is, if we have 300 or 400, that just makes us a stronger district.
And I understand the importance of that, but I also understand that there's only a certain amount of money annually, regardless of what funds you're getting it from. So are we going to cap it at a certain number, or that's what I was asking?
Well, I think well, right now they have to be at those identified schools. And so in order to use the funds that we're using, they have to be designated as one of those 15 or 16 schools. So if it did expand to the point where every one of those identified schools were included in the opportunity, then we would have to assess our ability to continue to expand it. That's why we want to start with a pilot program and be able to determine, first of all, to be able to assure that it's going to be sustainable and to grow it at a rate that we can support and continue to provide those incentives.
questioning, like if they spend 5 years there and then go to another school, does it carry with them? Is that what you're questioning? Or
No,
just,
my question was if we had 400 teachers who met the qualifications to be able to apply, and maybe we only have funding for 200 of those, are we gonna limit it to 200 this year and 200 the next year? Is there some type of priority?
well, I think Dr. Bourgeois and them, when they were doing the Title I calculation, they kind of considered what the maximum exposure would be for that, if I'm not mistaken.
We talked about numbers, we've looked at different funding sources. We feel like if everybody that we have took full advantage of it now, it's well within our ability to support it. If we look into the future and in 3 or 4 years, if it got to the point where we had way more than we could support, we would have to put some kind of criteria in place to determine who would qualify and who wouldn't.
So just so I understand, the investment that we're making both in the employee in additional money they make and training for ELA and math, it would be a $7,250 investment in that employee in both salary and training. And for the mentor and the intervention content leader, it'd be $5,750, and those are all Title I funds going into that employee.
Some of it's Title II for the training for the non-Title I school teachers. Title II is a fund that is allocated for professional development, so we could use, and we will use some of that money. If you have a teacher at Kingston that wanted to get that endorsement, we could support that through Title II.
And my next question, that we're not making, since we're doing this effective January, we're not making this pro rata for half the year. If they get it in January, they get the full $3,000 in May.
Yes, sir. We set the funding up to be able to support that. We currently have several teachers that are in the process of finishing the program. They're actually working on the modules right now, and they will finish at different times. We felt like that we could afford them the opportunity into January because they've already had the training. They just haven't finished all of the modules, and they would still have an opportunity based on that training to have a positive impact on their site in the current year.
So that would mean $3,750 to them in May of 2020 for those that get the certificate in salary, correct? Okay.
So let me just get this straight. So this began this last summer. We have people already in training. And is it my understanding that the ones that are being trained at this point are in one of these schools? Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, next summer, will that open up another new round and other teachers can do it, or?
Is it, Doc, is there another opportunity in the spring, or would it be the summer? I believe it begins in May, doesn't it?
Right now, because we're working with Louisiana Tech, we're on the quarter system, and so we'll follow that. They're all online courses. There's 2 graduate classes our teachers will be taking. They'll receive graduate hours for that. We did secure scholarships because we had so many people interested that we selected, the district selected. It's not a self-selection process.
Right.
And to answer your question, as the summer comes, let's say Bossier Elementary has 5 teacher openings, and there's 5 teachers from Kingston that say, I'm interested in what's happening at Bossier L. I think I might want to go over there. And they have that certification, and they meet those other requirements, the highly effective and their leadership component and PD component, they will be eligible for the $3,000 that following May. So we're constantly going to be training people. We have the funds to do that. And like I shared with Mr. Downey, there's 12 employee teacher spots at Bossier L. If we fill up, did I say 12? 18 spots there. If every single one of those spots, those teachers have an endorsement, albeit math, interventionist, ELA, or mentor on their teaching certificate, wow, I mean, that's a turnaround just by the level of instructional capacity that those teachers will bring to the classroom and to the students.
So, Doc, will there be refresher classes as they go along once they get certified, will there later on these same people be going through?
There's gonna be, I'm sorry, Doc, let me respond to that. Their requirements for professional development are every year. So they have to meet the same criteria year after year. You can't just be a part of the leadership team the first year and then get off the second year and not do any PD and still get the stipend.
They have to log so many hours of professional development. And then I also have an additional question. So Bossier High School, for instance, if we have 20 teachers that want to do it, do we have 20 slots, or they still have to go through the selection process?
It's not self-selection.
Right, so they still have to apply and be admitted to the program.
That is correct. So they have to be endorsed by their principal, and then at my level, at the district level, we will look at those who are interested, and then we'll make our selection of who has demonstrated through their past compass evaluations and recommendations who we will pay to be trained and go through this process. And I will share this with you. We have had to pull teeth to get anyone to volunteer from some of these schools to even be trained. It is that rigorous of a training program.
And I'll add to that, we wanted to make sure that these incentives or stipends, whatever the correct term would be, which all of them are correct, but we want to make sure it's based on merit, that we're just not spending money and not getting a return on it that will impact the school in a positive way. And so we're very careful to try to set this up to where we had the greatest assurance that we would get the impact that we wanted. And I want to add this too, and I'm sure that Dr. Bourgeois can add to it as well, is there's a conversation going around the district now about what's happening at Bossier Elementary, what's happening at some of these other schools. And before now, there was very little interest in teachers that were at some of these more attractive schools of ever going to maybe some of these more challenging schools. And that conversation is now changing because they want to be a part of the impact that is being made at those sites. And so our hope and desire is that this will just continue to snowball, and you will see teachers that are highly effective in some of these more attractive schools wanting to be a part of the change. And we're excited about it. I know you can talk to some of these teachers that are in these sites that we've already talked about and located, and I think it's a really positive vibe, and I think it's a great step in the right direction.
We had this listed as a report only because we thought several of the board members were going to be out tonight. And I know in a message earlier we talked about voting on this in a future meeting. But yourself, if we wanted to take a vote on this tonight, is this something we could change from a report and add to action item?
Yes, you can always add it. Same thing. Vote to add it or amend it, and then let's vote, ask for comment.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that we amend tonight's agenda to add this as a action item to tonight's agenda.
Could we just amend that, amend item 3.01 from a report to action? Can we just, we can just amend item 3.01 to where it says report to where it says report and action?
Right, and take action, yes.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that we amend agenda item 3.01 to reflect report and action as described previously.
A motion by Mr. Newman. We have a second by Ms. Smith. Please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Has now been added to the or amended. Now we will vote.
I'll make a motion to approve. You have to have, okay.
Any public comments on adding this item to the agenda? No public comments at this time? Ms. Darby?
I make a motion to approve.
I second.
We have a motion to approve the academic strategy plan by Ms. Darby. We have a second by Ms. Brotherton. Please vote. Motion carries. Item 3.02, report Building and Grounds Planning and Development Committee meeting held September 10th, 2019, presented by Mr. Eric Newman, chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have two action items tonight. The Building and Grounds Planning and Development Committee met on September 10th, 2019. The entire committee was in attendance. We also had a couple of extra board members there as well. Item number one, requiring action. The committee recommends that the Bossier Parish School Board approve use of Benton Middle South Campus for facility used by River Park Church as recommended by Dr. Kyle Machen, principal, in accordance with Bossier Parish School Board Policy KFA and facility usage guidelines. This passed in committee.
I'm sorry, this is out of committee. Please vote. Motion carries.
Action item number two, the committee recommends Bossier Parish School Board authorize the superintendent to act on its behalf to enter into a local services agreement with the Bossier Parish Police Jury, execute documents, and take action related to an asphalt overlay at the outdoor court at Cope Middle School funded by the 2012 Bond Construction Program excess funds from the LSA with Bossier Parish Police Jury and to be completed after track overlays. This passed unanimously as well.
This is out of committee. Please vote. Motion carries.
And we had three items for discussion only, no action required. Item number one, CM 1501, Benton Middle South Secure Entrance. The committee considered additional security measures for the 8th grade center at Benton Middle School. This will be discussed further in the next Audit and Security Committee meeting. Number two, CM 1703C, Plain Dealing Entrance Canopy. Additional sidewalk canopy covers at locations at Plain Dealing K-12 were discussed. Mr. Norwood will be bringing back options for that. And then we finished up with a presentation by Mr. Babineau of the 2012 Bond Construction Update. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Newman. Items 3.03 and 3.04 were covered in Mr. Newman's report. Item 3.05, Insurance Committee meeting held September 19th, 2019, presented by Billy Joe Brotherton.
The Insurance Committee met this afternoon at 5:02, and we had several items on the agenda to vote on. Number one was the motion, the committee recommends the Bossier Parish School Board approve Berkeley/LSIG renewal for the school board liability, employment practices liability, employee benefits liability, and limited sexual abuse liability coverage, commercial auto liability, and general liability for a one-year policy term. This was voted on in committee and passed.
This is out of committee. Please vote.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Mr. Batt?
The motion on the does that need to be made now before we vote on this?
Done in committee.
Yeah, it's gone to committee. My understanding, I'm sorry, you're reading the,
As far as the coverage goes, at the bottom it says regular session. It's my understanding that we need to read this into the record before we vote on
But that
this.
comes in this.
yes, right, if there's,
It'll be in
we're
the
voting, it was
report.
on, in committee, so we're voting
I
to
just
do
want
it.
to make
so
sure that we
just
don't
read
need
it
to do
in.
No,
that.
it's in
Regular
here.
session.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Motion carries. Real fast, Mr. Rogers? Just wanted to make sure, you and I had a conversation that maybe we needed to read these in, but since they were read in the committee, are you good with that?
I'm gonna, we're on legal counsel, unless there is a reason that we shouldn't do it, it's been recommended to us that we read it in, but I yield to
Right,
Mr.
and
Self.
I think with something this important, it would be better just to go ahead and read it into, the record of the regular session.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
At this time, Mr. Bass, will you read that in, please?
Yes. I make a motion to reject uninsured, underinsured motorist bodily injury and property damage coverage from the automobile policy, and further move to authorize Mr. Frank Rougeau, Chief Financial Officer, to sign on behalf of Bossier Parish School Board to reject uninsured, underinsured motorist bodily injury and property damage coverage from the automobile policy.
Motion by Mr. Bass, we have a second by Mr. Bamberg. Please vote. Motion carries. What about the excess liability policy? All right, I'll also make this motion. I'll also make this motion. I make a motion to reject uninsured, underinsured motorist bodily injury and property damage coverage from the excess liability policy, and further move to authorize Mr. Frank Rougeau, Chief Financial Officer, to sign on behalf of Bossier Parish School Board to reject uninsured, underinsured motorist bodily injury and property damage coverage from the excess liability policy. A motion by Mr. Bass, a second by Ms. Smith. Please vote. Motion carries. And I apologize, Ms. Brotherton, I
No,
was
that's
not,
fine.
I was not at your meeting, and I was just asked to make sure that these got read
Yeah,
in.
and see, I was told to read them in here, but it's no problem. It's no problem.
And so I
So I
didn't know.
think we have one left.
Okay.
I think. Number 3, the committee recommends the Bossier Parish School Board approve Great Lakes Insurance SC renewal for physical damage coverage for lease driver's education autos for 1-year policy term. That was voted on and unanimous.
This is out of committee. Please vote. Motion carries.
Oh, he didn't read both parts. There was 2 parts to 4. Yeah, I know, but you read the part, yeah, I know, Eric, but they, yes, okay.
I apologize if I
Sorry,
created
it's my
confusion.
fault.
But the last thing I think would be
So number 4, the Lloyd's of London.
yes, ma'am, approving that. I think it
Yeah.
will wrap it up.
Okay.
Thank you.
The committee recommends the Bossier Parish School Board consider optional excess liability coverage offered by Lloyd's of London for a 1-year policy term. This was voted on and passed.
This is out of committee. Please vote.
And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Ms. Brotherton. I do have a question, Mr. Self. The fact that we voted on these 2 items that weren't in her report,
Okay, yeah, right, I was not sure if those were from the, committee meeting. But were they, yeah, so,
they were from the committee. I wasn't at the committee meeting, so I'm.
Yes, they
yes,
were.
Okay.
I think.
They were
So
read in the
we
committee.
do not need to add those to the agenda. Y'all
No.
voted on
We
these.
voted on all
in
of
the
those and read them in
Okay.
committee.
Yeah,
That's
and-
why I thought it was in the report.
That's why I normally don't miss the committee meeting. 'Cause
Well,
just
I
confused.
apologize. I was
No.
just told they would need to be read in the record
Yeah,
regular session.
Yeah, I think we got a little out of order, but I think everything, is good as far as the agenda and that.
We don't have an agenda item showing that those 2 items on your
Read.
report, or is it on?
It's on my report, but
All right.
I don't, it doesn't matter. We got it in there? And then it's,
Very good. Item 3.10, declaration of surplus presented by Carrie Douglas, Chief Procurement Officer.
Good evening, President Cheatham, Superintendent Downey, members of the board. I simply request that you declare the items listed in the September 9th memo as surplus.
So moved.
We have a motion by Ms. Darby,
Second.
second by Ms. Smith. Please vote. Motion carries. Item 3.11, request approval of trip request.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Smith,
Second.
second by Ms. Brotherson. Please vote. Motion carries. Item 4.01, announcements, superintendent comments by Mr. Downey.
Thank you, President Cheatham. The next regular session of the board will be October 3rd at 6 p.m. here at the BIC. I am not aware of any other committees meetings that are scheduled prior to that. That concludes my announcements.
Thank you, sir. Item 5.01, adjournment of the regular session of the board.
Mr. President,
Did we
I
vote?
have one comment.
Sorry, Mr. Wiggins.
I just like to say, because this is so important, Mr. Slack, get back. You talking about your hip and your knee. You ain't lame. You about to be in the Cotton Picking Hall of Fame. Thank you, sir.
Got a motion to adjourn by Mr. Slack, a second by Mr. Bullard. Please vote.
That's pretty good.
Motion carries. Meeting adjourned.